All right, we're recording. Hi, welcome everyone to my Things I Know Tuesdays. And we are doing a special, I'm recording this ahead of time because my guest is in the desert. And I was afraid that if we tried to go live, that it would get all crazy. So we decided to just go ahead and record this, and I am uploading this. So it's not technically live. But please, in any case, as you're watching this, say hi, drop in, say where you're from, where you're watching this from, replay, whatever. We'll be sharing this on Amy's page as well. So same thing. Let us know where you're watching this from. I am so excited to have Amy Pickard with me today. Amy and I have known each other, probably since we were 16, 17?
Yeah.
Probably, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Back in our rock and roll days in Dayton, Ohio in the 80s.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, so crazy. And now we both live out here in LA. She is staying at home in the desert, which is awesome. But that we reconnected when we moved out here. And she's just got this new business. It's not even new. How long has Good to Go been around?
It's 5 years now.
Okay, I was going to guess 5 years. And I've posted about Good to Go several times on my page. And I specifically wanted Amy to be on this month. It was always going to be in April because we were going to talk about her departure file, her Good to Go business tied to taxes, because death and taxes. And then what's April 16th? What's that day?
It's also National Healthcare Decisions Day. So it's an actual kind of, national day where we want people to think about their advanced planning because of the expression death and taxes. So they go together.
Yep, they sure do. The only couple things you can count on, right?
Yeah.
But it also obviously makes total sense to do this now with everything we're going through with the coronavirus.
Absolutely.
And specifically around what came to me around this was the idea of how many people are dying alone because we can't visit. And it breaks my heart, Amy. I'm sure you're feeling all the feels around this too.
Mm-hmm.
I've said this before on my page. I know my sister feels the same way. I am so grateful that it is not a year ago today and that my dad is not in a nursing home, that he passed before all this happened, because the idea of not being with him, not being able to get to him, and so every time I hear that like side story about this, it just is heartbreaking. So I'm going to let you take it over. Tell everybody about what this is.
Okay, well, my company is called Good to Go, and I was living in Los Angeles as a freelance television producer and broadcaster, and I work in the music business as a freelancer, and I was just living my life, my carefree life, and then suddenly my mom died out of the blue, unexpectedly, and it was so awful. It was my first experience with death. And I had to fly instantly from LA to Chicago, with all of these thoughts in my head of like, oh my gosh, my mom's dead. How am I going to live? Will I ever forget the sound of her laughter? I mean, just all these things. And then once you show up in Chicago, I got into her condo, and I just thought, because I have to take care of everything now. And I just thought, I don't even know the cable company in Chicago that she subscribes to. I don't know what the electric company is called in Chicago. So I had to do all these Google searches. And of course, all of her bills were paid online, but she had it on a computer that had a password that I didn't have. And, I joked later, as I've gone through and processed her grief, it's like, I just wish I could talk to her one more time, not to say I love you, but what was your Wi-Fi password? What do you want done with your car? Where's the title? And I had hoped that there was an instruction manual to kind of help me through these, what I call the death duties, and there wasn't. And I thought, I've just got to prevent other people from going through what I went through. But how do I do that? And death changes you. And I just thought, well, I don't want to work in TV anymore. That doesn't mean as much to me. How can I make a difference in the world with the knowledge that I now have? And I thought, I want to start an advanced planning company, but do it with a sense of humor and try to get my personal stories across to convince people to get their own stuff taken care of. Because I found that people were listening to me when I was talking to friends and saying, and this is before I created Good to Go. I was just like, you've got to tell your parents to get a will. You've got to ask them what they want done with the couch and this and that. And they were listening to me. Shock. And I thought, okay, my personal story can inspire people and just make it real for them, you know, because death is such an abstract thing. And I do want to target people while they're young and healthy. And so I created my company, Good to Go. And I thought, how do I get across this information in an entertaining way? And I just thought I would use all of my experience in pop culture and, you know, just bring it out in a party. So I would throw Good to Go parties, and everybody would bring a potluck dish to share based on a recipe of a loved one, because I feel close to my granny and my mom when I make their recipes. Everybody brings booze, because if you're going to talk about the hard stuff, you got to drink the hard stuff.
That's awesome.
And then with a sense of humor and a rock and roll death theme soundtrack, like Another One Bites the Dust and Stairway to Heaven and stuff like that, you know, I facilitate a 3-hour party where we eat, we drink, we cry, we laugh, whatever. And I tell them what they need to know. And it's a bit hard to convince people of the piece that they don't know they're going to need. But I am constantly telling them, you know, this is the stuff that you need to go over. And so I actually created a over 50-page booklet that comes in the Good to Go departure file. Scene right there. And it includes all of the daily logistics that I didn't have answers to after my mom died. And, you know, like her doctor's names, her dentist's names, her hairdresser. Like I had to call all of these people and say that she passed away, you know, and just goofy things like password computers and bill information, because after someone dies, you've got to call every single company and disconnect their services. And it's a nightmare because they usually want the permission of the dead person, which is kind of hard to get a hold of them.
Oh my God, I know.
I mean, the Chicago Tribune, God bless them, they just would not cancel the subscription. And finally I was like, my mom is dead and she cannot read, you know, like,
oh my God,
cancel the newspaper. But anyway, so I put that all these like little details that nobody ever thinks of in this booklet. And the first half is just all the daily logistics and all the logistics. Do you want an obituary? If so, what newspapers do you want them in? If so, what picture do you want used? If so, you know, blah, blah, blah. There's like a million questions just over one thing, like an obituary. So of course we cover body disposition and funeral wishes or life celebration or cremation versus burial and those things. But then the second half, which is my favorite half, which is kind of the soul interview. It's kind of a history of your joy, not just a history of your bills. And it has comforting things that I had the forethought to talk to my mom about, but then after she died, I put in questions that I wish we would have talked about. Like for my mom, like if she would have filled out, you know, how I will comfort you while you're grieving my death. If I could have had that little parenting instruction from my mom, I think that would have really comforted me. And I know that there's a question, what do you believe happens when we die? And I knew that my mom, what her beliefs were, and I found that comforting to me. So basically I created Good to Go and a departure file to cut down guilt and miscommunication, misunderstandings, to you know, preempt any kind of family infighting, you know, and it's just going to make your grief a little less stressful. That was a rambly answer, but
no, it's perfect. No, you nailed it. And then I could take it from there because we went to one of your parties. You invited Darren and I to come to one of your parties at your house. I got to meet famous people. That was fun. And she's like just a friend of yours, but I was like, oh my God, I know her. Anyways, and Darren and I were in the thick of both of our parents being ill. My dad and his mom. His mom is still with us. Of course, my dad isn't. And the thing that I really appreciated, well, first of all, I got everybody to buy one. So my sister and her husband, my mom, and then my dad, we did a virtual one because I was pretty sure that it wasn't going to be something he was going to do. But what I loved was because I was at that party and you shared so many of the stories of not only what you had to go through after the fact with your mom, but then what you were able to do with that knowledge for your dad, that it got me thinking about, okay, so he's not going to fill this out. But in the time I have with him, I can pepper him with questions. I can have ideas. One of the biggest pieces for me personally with my dad's death is he went into hospice. I was able to fly home. when I got there, he was out of it, but the TV was on, and you had shared a story about you knowing that your dad would not have wanted the TV on in his hospital room, and when he was out, right?
He was in the ICU,
Okay.
and I walked in, and they had The Price is Right blaring, and I don't know if you've ever seen or heard The Price is Right without seeing it, but it is so obnoxious. And I just thought, my dad doesn't want this, because when he had surgery a couple of years earlier, he had a quadruple bypass surgery. He would call me from the hospital room and say, I'm bored. And I'm like, how can you be bored? All you do at home is watch cable TV. You've got cable TV in the hospital. And he said to me, I don't like to watch TV or listen to TV when I'm sick. I never knew that. So just that little conversation made me think, oh my gosh, he doesn't like the TV on. So I turned it off instantly,
Yeah. And that story just so resonated with me. And so I get into hospice, and they had Entertainment Tonight on. Now, my dad also likes to watch that, but nowhere on God's green earth would he be watching Entertainment Tonight.
On my deathbed, I would love it.
That's no one ever. Yeah, exactly. And, again, like, I knew why it was on. They want to have sound going, but we had people in the room the entire time. And as soon as it was just he and I turned the TV off. Actually, I think I turned it down because I wanted the visual. I wanted the comfort. But then I did put on music. It wasn't music it was just music I knew he loved. I played 70s rock, and then I played 50s rock. Like, I did all the things I knew he loved. And the reality of it was, the phone was sitting by me. He was in a bed. Logistically, he probably couldn't hear it, but it was so comforting to me. And I fell asleep. And when I woke up, he had passed, and Reelin' in the Years from Steely Dan was on. Now I'm going to cry. And it was perfect.
That's beautiful.
It was just, he loved Steely Dan. It was something that we got to see them in concert together at Riverbend. Yeah. I mean, it was just perfect. And I thought to myself, like, if I hadn't been to that party and heard you tell those stories. So while the departure file is important, the parties, and I know right now we can't do them, but like, I got so much out of that.
That's amazing.
Even above and beyond filling this out. And yes, you're right. The first half is stuff that some people do. Like, my mom's written down all that stuff. My dad had written down all of his passwords and so forth. That part was really easy.
Right.
But it's the other stuff, the things you don't even think of. Perfect example. My stepdad is cremated. I got to say to my mom, what do we do with Lowell when you pass? Right? And she was like, I don't know. We've since come up with a plan. Which I would have, did you know you had to do, like, who knew you had to figure out what to do with ashes when you pass? So it's those little things you never think of.
That's the thing. It's just, if someone dies and you're in possession of someone's cremains, you don't have them to ask, oh my goodness, what do you want me to do with your parents' cremains? I mean, that's traumatizing. You don't want to just throw them away or whatever. So these are the things. So a question in the departure file is, are you in possession of any cremains? If so, what would you like done with them? I had a client that whose mom passed away, and as she was clearing out her home, she found her mom's dog's ashes. And she was so upset, and she called me and she said, I didn't ask her what to do with the dog's ashes. And I said, well, look, I can't tell you what your mom would want, but obviously that's her doggy and she loved her. And so she has her ashes. Why don't you just, sprinkle them where you're sprinkling your mom's ashes, and they can be close. And she was like, okay, so again, it's like, when you're grieving,
you're not logical.
No. And that's another thing we're going to talk about, especially with COVID-19 and the coronavirus and everything. But yeah, when you're grieving, you don't have the brain space to think about the future or think about the details. You're just focused on survival and endurance, and just one step at a time, and just trying to kind of figure out what your new normal is going to be. You're trying to process your DNA leaving the planet. I mean, it is such an intense time. And if Good to Go, now I'm going to cry, if Good to Go can just take a little bit of that stress away, then that is the whole reason that I exist.
Yeah, I agreed. I mean, I knew from the minute that, so Darren was with you at Howard Jones, I think, and you told him about this. Yes. And he came home the next morning and told me, and I was like, holy crap, that is her life's purpose. Like, it was just him relaying it from you. I was like, that's amazing. And then to see you in action at the party, And what I love too is as you do these parties, I remember you saying you're learning things from people. You know, like you're even
So
at our
much.
party, like people, Darren said a few things about his mom, and you're like, oh my gosh, I hadn't thought about that. You've now
Yes.
created a whole separate one just for musicians and what they do with
Yes.
all of their creative work and their guitars and keyboards and fill in the blank,
Yeah.
which is amazing. So let's talk a little bit about this time we're in right now. Again, I think having this, knowing I'm putting my hands on my departure file, like this would be, again, I cannot imagine the people that are going through this who are losing loved ones and for
Right.
whatever reason, you know, it could be any other reason, but they can't be
Sure.
with them.
Sure.
And what I don't even know what to say about that. And I just feel like this is so needed right now.
Well, I think that I definitely wanted to talk about the idea, and I do cover this in parties and consultations. I relay the story of when I first encountered hospice. And when my mom died, I was then tasked to be the power of attorney for her mother, my granny, who was in a nursing home in Ohio. And so that was a whole new thing for me to be immersed in elder care out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And so we called hospice in to help. And my first question, because I was curious, now obviously this is before I created Good to Go. I said to her, I said, why do I always read about when people are on their deathbeds in the hospital or whatever, you know, their family and loved ones have this vigil, and then as soon as they leave the room to go get a cup of coffee or to go home and nap or to take a 10-minute shower, that's when the loved one goes. And what a tragedy that is. And I feel it's so horrible, you know, when people die alone. And the hospice worker woman, she just put her hand on me, on my shoulder. She was so sweet. And she said, actually, we think the opposite. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, when you have all of your loved ones surrounding you on your deathbed, that energy is keeping you earthbound. Don't go. We don't want you to leave. What are we going to do without you? And so the dying person is kind of one foot in and one foot out of the world, you know, of each world. And they're just like, oh, I don't want to leave my family. And so when the family leaves, that's when they say, you know what, I can go, you know, and that blew my mind because I never thought of it that way. And another thing that I believe, and, you know, my mom, granny, and my dad all died without me being there. And so technically they were alone. But the thing that I know in my bones is that they were so confident in the love that I had for them and that they had for me, and that they were feeling from other people their entire lives, like a lifetime of love that allowed them to go, you know, that love. And so when I read, you know, these stories of people dying alone because they're in the ICU and they're contagious and they don't want any family members around, and the family members are so devastated, I'm not taking away from that devastation because a lot of people do want to be there. But I also just want them to hold space for an alternative explanation as well, which is they're good. They are so loved up by you that love is allowing them to let go. So you're loving them into the next world, so to speak.
Yeah.
And that's why you know, it's important in this time of the pandemic to, you know, have toilet paper and hand sanitizer, but it's more important, I think, to talk about what if we get the virus? What's the plan? What if I die alone? What do you think? What if you die alone? What do you think? And I would say to anybody listening to have these conversations, you know, if you ask me, okay, Amy, if you get COVID-19 and, you know, you die alone, what do you want us to know? And I would just say, just play some music at home that you know I have. Think about memories of me that make you laugh, and just send out the love. And I know for a fact I will receive it. I know for a fact I will. Even if you're across the world, if you're in Australia and you're my friend, or if you're in England or Dayton or wherever, I am going to feel your love. And in your case, talking about that knowledge that you have about, oh, well, maybe I'll play music instead of the TV. You know, when your loved ones are in a helpless situation, like you were with your dad, you knew there was basically nothing that you could do.
Yep.
But then suddenly you think, well, wait a minute, I bet he would rather have his favorite music and stuff. You know, that's making you feel helpful.
Yep.
And then also just loved up, so that you know that you're doing something, you know, however small, even if it's just playing a song or whatever for your loved one. And so, and it's the same if your loved one is in a coma, or if they're in a medicated coma. In many instances, many coronaviruses patients are. So it's just, I feel like, please have the conversations about, what if there's an unplanned hospitalization? What's the plan? You know, what do I want done? You know, who's going to take care of who, and things like that. So I say, discuss your thoughts on intubation, because COVID-19 is a respiratory illness. It is almost certain that if you're hospitalized, that you will be intubated. And when you're intubated, you can't communicate. So you need to communicate your wishes to your loved ones, and to keep talking about it, you know, and because if you can imagine not having that conversation, suddenly your loved one is hospitalized, you're not allowed to be there, and yet you've got to make these decisions over the phone. And you've never discussed it with your loved one. And so then you're feeling guilty, like, oh, why couldn't we have talked about this before, but we didn't think it was the right time. And, you know, so I'm saying, while families are staying at home, this is the perfect time to get your advanced planning together. It's just, no one regrets it. And advanced planning won't kill you.
No, and that's just, that is true. And you just, the thing I would say too about it is, once you get going, it's easier to get going. You know, it's like anything else. The minute you take the first step, I know I was a little overwhelmed by, oh my God, I got to put all the bills.
50 pages.
Yeah, right. And once you get moving, it flows. You know, you can. It's just the first step's the hardest. Thank you for those reminders too. About that was helpful to remind everyone about it. God forbid you are in that position. That as long as you've, even if your family knows you love them.
It's a hard thing to talk about. And I'm not saying, hey, it's so whimsical, but what I'm saying is, it is so important right now to have those conversations. And as hard as it is to have those conversations and to think about, what if I die? What if I'm in a coma? What if I can't come back? You know, all these things, it's so hard. People are afraid of getting emotional, but I say, get emotional. This is life and death stuff. If you can't get emotional over that, I don't know what you're supposed to get emotional over. So it's okay to show emotions in front of your loved ones. And also, it is going to add such a beautiful depth to your communication and your understanding. And I mean, literally, I created this company when my mom died, after my mom died, and then my dad came to a Good to Go party. And it was a year before he died. We had no idea he was going to die a year later, because he was healthy. He had come through surgery and all these things. And when he was in the ICU, suddenly, unexpectedly, because he had pneumonia, I was rock solid on everything that he wanted. And I remember talking to the doctor and telling him exactly what Dad wanted. And I said, look, you know, when Dad's conscious, you can ask him, you can have the conversation with him, because I've been nothing but real with him, because this is my business, you know, and he's seen what I went through with my mom. And the doctor was so impressed, and he was just like, okay, wow, you okay, da 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 da. And he, you know, we came up with a treatment plan. And as he walked out of the room, I just went over to my dad and I held his hand, and I just thought, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I created Good to Go, because it's actually helping me. And like, I had no idea that, you know, a company I created for others would actually help me. And then the other thing that blew my mind was that, you know, when my dad woke up about the third day, he was in ICU. He was there for 6 days and died on the 7th day. I said to him, you know, everything's taken care of, right? You know, I've got all your banking information. We had gone to the lawyer. We'd gotten his will. We had his living will / advanced healthcare directive airtight. We had talked, we'd kept the conversation going even after we planned. And so I said, you know, everything's taken care of. And the look of peace
Yeah.
I'm gonna get emotional. The look of peace on his face. And I thought, oh my gosh, it gives the person peace
Yep.
who's filling this out, knowing that they're not leaving a mess behind for their loved one.
100%.
And
Yeah.
for
I
parents,
mean,
oh, go ahead.
no. I mean, and I want to reiterate, you're not only in what you just said, not only is it help the person who's left behind, right? Because I had that same experience of like Amy and I were able then the day, not
Your
the day,
sister.
yeah, my sister. Sorry. That's right. Sorry. My sister, Amy.
Yeah.
We spent the day like, having all of our feelings, but then the next day we kind of got up and we were like, okay, this is what we got to do. Cause we knew. And we also got to laugh and look through pictures and have this kind of celebration in some way before I had to fly back to LA.
And can I ask you, because you knew, didn't that make you and your sister feel like you're paying tribute to your dad by carrying
100%.
out what he wanted? So it adds
100%.
a level of depth there that you never thought would come from just a conversation,
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, we got to spend the day he actually passed. Amy and I each had one of our best friend in Ohio come and visit. So we had this nice little time with them, and then we went to bed. We got up the next morning. We just started doing things, and we started going through pictures, and we were laughing and joking, and Dad had left some funny things behind, and I felt like we got to have a day of like absolute joy, and it was because we knew what to do and we knew what he wanted. I mean, to go back to when he was before he went into hospice, he went to the hospital and it was like it was surgery or not. And we knew like he didn't want surgery, but had we not had these conversations with him, and they were bit and piece. Like I said, he never got a chance to fill out the departure file, but because I knew what it was, I could have these conversations. I could direct them. So let's say, hypothetically speaking, one of my friends buys a Good to Go for them, but their parents aren't into it. Just you doing it yourself is going to help you with your parents as well. Yes. That's the thing that's so amazing, is whether the whole family buys one or just one of you buys one. It's like, and really, I'm going to say invest. It's not about buying. This is an absolute investment in your well-being, your mindset, as well as the people you leave behind. And then, you just know that everything's going to be fine. It just makes grieving so much easier because you don't have to worry about those bits and pieces.
Right. And it just takes a level of stress away. I mean, we were trying to figure out like, well, what would, my mom joked, just cremate me and put me in a mayonnaise jar and leave me out for trash day. And I just was like, oh, har, 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 and then when she really died, I was just like, I can't go get a Hellman's mayonnaise jar and put my mom in it. I'm like, that's not a plan where people say, oh, I don't want to do advanced planning. Just shoot me and you take me out in the woods and shoot me. And I'm like, that's a crime and not a plan. But it's true, and I say that's the perfect entree to open the conversation with your elderly parents. If you're feeling reticent about that subject, or maybe your parents don't like to talk about stuff like that. Is, hey, I'm getting my advanced planning together because this crazy lady on Good to Go is yelling at me, telling me I need to get it done. And I just suddenly thought, you don't know, Mom and Dad, what my wishes are if something happens to me. But then I realized I don't know what your wishes are. Do you guys have a will? We don't even know, or my siblings don't even know. Where is it? What's in it? all these things. And so, oh no, it says my internet connection is unstable. Are we okay?
Yep, we're good. We're good.
Okay.
Yep.
Sorry. I'm in the desert and it's very windy today. So, but yeah, it's, so many people say to me, cause I bug all of my friends. I'm so fun at parties. I'm just like, have you talked to your parents yet? Have you talked to your parents yet? And a lot of them are like, I don't know how to bring it up because my dad has Parkinson's and and I'm just like, okay, you tell me, when is the perfect time to talk about advanced planning? Right. Is it when you've got a loved one or you yourself has been diagnosed with a terminal illness? That's awkward. You don't want to bring it up then. Is it when you're scheduled for an emergency surgery and the morning before your surgery, a nurse comes in and says, oh, here's your advanced planning that you haven't done and haven't thought about, until just now, and you've got an hour to fill it out, Is it, after someone has a terminal diagnosis? It's just like, come on, you guys, there's no perfect time except now.
Yeah.
The perfect time is now. And if you're older and you've had any kind of health issue, you should already have this stuff written down, and Aretha Franklin.
And here's the thing, they may have a power of attorney. Some of the specific things that you can just, that we are so aware of, they may have, but this is like so much more.
Well, that's the thing. You're not going to put your bills in a will. You're not going to put your, what you once said in your obituary in a will. And that's why I put them in the departure file. It's just all the everyday stuff that you have to make decisions about without the person. I joke that it's like suddenly you're a personal assistant without the assistance of the person. So it's just like, the producer in me is like, it's better to have answers.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. Even the obituary thing that I remember, I wrote the obituary because, again, we had not asked Dad, but I remember thinking, you know what? This can be funny. Like, I can make this kind of funny, it was kind of at my mom's expense. So she didn't love it, but I was like, look, this is who he was. He would have wanted this to be funny, and he might not have even written it funny, but this is who he was. So
well, this is one of my favorite things about, talking about death and whatever is what you're mentioning, is that it doesn't have to be cookie cutter. Your obituary doesn't have to be cookie cutter. The life celebration or funeral does not have to be cookie cutter. There are a million different things that you can do as long as you and the dead person or the dying person, are okay with it. Screw everybody else. Screw everybody else's judgment. I mean, I was so lucky that, my dad did fill out the departure file, and he wrote his own obituary, which blew my mind because he didn't tell me that he did.
Huh.
And he specifically said, don't mention GM, because he worked at GM for 32 years. He goes, I hated every day of it. And then I heard through the grapevine, some relatives were a little pissed that I didn't mention GM in the obituary, but I was just like, guess what, y'all? Dad said he didn't want it. So there. Because people get very judgy when it comes to grief and death.
Oh, yeah.
And so I want to encourage everybody to, and that's the thing. Yes, we talk about death. Yes, advanced planning is talking about death. But what the river beneath the river of all that really is about life. It's about the life that you've led and how you want that expressed. And my dad was such a huge animal lover that when I had his life celebration, and we had talked about it, I said, do you want a funeral? Do you want a life celebration? He goes, I don't want any of that. And I said, well, and this is another reason why it's so good to talk to your family about it. Because I said, well, I have to have something. I have to have something that's funereal, to, have that closure for you and to celebrate your life. And I said, can I do that? Is that okay? And he goes, sure. I don't give a crap.
Oh no, she got stuck. Oh, she got stuck in the worst face too. Come back. Okay, we're back, and hopefully I edited out that little piece of Amy's really bad weird face. I'm sure she did not want it on Facebook. So coming back, you're welcome. Let's just hope I can do it. We're coming back. You were saying about the life celebration. Your dad didn't want one. You said you needed one for finality, and so he loved animals.
And so a friend of mine who ran an animal sanctuary that I'd actually taken my dad to a year previously, my dad got to pet a deer, which he'd never done, and he got to feed an albino raccoon and just all these things. He loved it. He was like an 8-year-old kid, And so when I invited the head of the animal sanctuary to the life celebration, I said to him, hey, by any chance, do you have any baby animals? And he said, well, yeah, why? And I said, can you bring them to my dad's life celebration? And he said, would your dad like that? And I was like, are you kidding me? He would love it. And P.S., so would I, because baby animals, come on. And I knew it was going to be the saddest day of my life. And I thought, well, why not have baby animals? And I wanted it to be a true celebration. And so He brought 2 little raccoon baby twin girls, Thelma and Louise. He brought down like a 12-day-old baby fawn who I got to curl up with and snuggle. And, you know, it was just so beautiful and so him. So we got beer in, we got the local pizza, Marion's Pizza, which is
we got Marion's at my
Did
dad's.
you?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I love it.
Everybody was like, I was like, we got to order Marion's. And my family was like, are you Marion? Well, we'll get to that other stuff. I'm like, Dad loved Marion's.
Yes.
I love that you did Marion's too.
Yes, we got a ton of Marion's Pizza and Mike sells potato chips and all the Dayton local stuff that my dad liked and that I love. And then we had the baby animals, you know, and I wrote kind of a filthy expression on a sheet cake, which I thought my dad would love and be hilarious, you know, think would be hilarious. And so this is what I'm saying, you know, everybody who arrived was just like, wow, this doesn't seem like a funeral, and who has baby animals? Who has a petting zoo? You know, and I was just like, there are no rules.
Yeah.
There are no rules. And I know for a fact my dad would have loved it. And I hired a photographer. A lot of people think, oh, it's a funeral, it's a life celebration, I don't want to be intrusive. Hey, when on the planet in your lifetime are you going to have everybody that loved the person that you loved as much? When are they going to be in the same room with each other, you know? And every picture from my dad's life celebration, every single person in it is smiling and laughing. And I just, that's the ultimate compliment to my dad, because he was such a funny guy. He had such a great sense of humor, you know?
That's awesome.
So I encourage people to be individual. If you want people to dress up a certain way at your life celebration or funeral, then make a note of it. You know, I'm going to have a tater tot bar at my funeral. So people grieving my death, my friends they're not going to be like, oh gosh, what kind of food do we do? I don't know. I have it all written down.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, it's perfect. I love it. So tell everybody where they can find you on Facebook, because you do go live almost every Wednesday night, Grievers and Groovers. I love that. And it's just really good stuff. And then and I'll throw all this in the chat or in the comments as well, but tell them how they can buy a departure file.
Yeah, well, my website is good to go peace, as in peace and love, .org. And you can purchase departure files off of my website there under services. And you can pay via PayPal. But if you don't have PayPal, just email me, amygoodtogo@gmail.com. My email address is on the site as well. And I'll give you the actual address, and you can send a personal check or whatever. So the departure files are for sale for $100 a piece. If you buy 2, it's just $190. So you get a couple bucks off, you know, and then if you buy 3, it's cheaper. So, you know, we're trying to throw in a few bargains there. And just on social media, on Instagram and Facebook, and Twitter, I'm at Good to Go Peace. And on Facebook every Wednesday, as you said, at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific,
I know.
7 p.m. Central.
Yep, I know.
I go live on the Good to Go Facebook page for Grievers and Groovers, and we talk about whatever's in the news regarding death and grief. And it's just a place where, you know, I found when I was grieving my mom's death that I didn't really want to go somewhere to talk to other people, but I wanted to get my grief validated. I wanted to know if what I was experiencing was normal, if it was just all in my head, and, you know, things like that. And so I just started going live and saying, hey, does anybody else still keep their dad's wallet around and look at it every once in a while? Or, you know, does anyone else have their dad's Old Spice cologne in their cupboard?
God, you're reading my mind. I literally have I'm looking at my dad's suitcase and I have his cologne, and my girlfriend, this was really nice, brought something she does every time, because somebody did this for her when somebody died for her. She goes and buys handkerchiefs and brings them to the people that are grieving. So she brought me one with a B on it for Bishop, my maiden name, my dad's name. And so I put his cologne on there.
Oh,
so that I can smell
beautiful.
It. Yeah.
Well, my dad had a bunch of t-shirts from LL Bean, you know, typical dude, you know, he had the same color shirt, you know, the type of shirt. He had like 18 t-shirts. in the rainbow colors. And so I had my friend make throw pillows out of his
Oh,
t-shirts.
that's cool.
And
Yeah.
when I stuff them, and you can hug them, and it's just that lovely feeling. So there's all kinds of different ways you can memorialize people that you love. You can plant a rose bush. I mean, roses have so many different weird names. It's almost like racehorses, that I'm sure you can find something that has resonance with your loved one. And that's what I say. Tell them, hey, why don't you plant a rose bush for me? And every time it blooms, you can think of me every day or whatever, And so then when that actually happens, you remember that conversation. The advanced planning conversations are the ones that will provide you with the most nutrition when you're grieving, because you can hear the dead person's voice in your head, and you know that they know what you're doing for them. Do you want a 5K race in their name? If you're a musician, do you want a music scholarship at the local high school or where your kids went to, or whatever? There's so many different beautiful things that you can do, and that's what Good to Go is all about. That's what we talk about in our consultations, and the specific thing that you talked about is, what is your sonic will? If you were in a deathbed situation, what sounds would you want to hear? And maybe it's not music. Like with my dad, even though he loved music, I wish I would have known at that time that he loved fishing. He was obsessed with fishing. And I wish I could have just played sounds of a lake and an oar, going through the water and the waves lapping up against the boat. I mean, I'm sure all you have to do is Google it. And I'm sure
you can
there's
YouTube anything. I fall asleep.
Yeah, there's some kind of MP3 there.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So who knows? Maybe your dad, took you guys to a Cincinnati Reds World Series game in 1975, and you play that because it's such a great memory, or whatever, I just think that little piece of, oh, wow, I could make this experience better, not only for the dying person, but for myself. Yeah. I think it's so worth it to have these conversations, and you got to do it while it's still abstract,
Yeah. Good. Very good point. You say you don't want to talk about it, but why not talk about it when you can kind of laugh about it and have kind of funny, sort of a celebration right there.
I mean, I told my dad after I cleaned out my mom's house, after she died, after I had to clean out my granny's house, I told my dad, I'm like, let's clean out your house together. You never see a U-Haul behind a hearse, and I don't want to do this again. And we put on some 50s music, and we ordered some Marians, and we went through his stuff, and and we laughed, and we made new memories. And he said, oh, I can see how this is much more fun while I'm alive instead of you sitting here crying. And I'm like, right? This is what I'm trying to tell you.
That's awesome. I love that. So I just have a quick question before we wrap this up. It just dawned on me. So you don't have these parties, but again, your personal stories are so valuable. If somebody orders a departure file, do you do a consultation like over Zoom, or?
I offer a consultation, because you can have just the departure file with no consultation, and you'll have information, but obviously in the consultation, I do share my stories, share the experiences, share the hospice conversations, share what I've learned, not only through my own experiences, but through my clients' experiences. I mean, my clients are the ones that are going through it. And oh man, I print the departure files as I go. So if I get a new tidbit of information, I'll add it in. So it keeps getting bigger and bigger. I'm trying to condense it because it is so overwhelming for people, but there's such good information in there. And so I do consultations either, via Zoom or Skype or FaceTime, or I can just do it over the phone.
Okay. That's good to know. Yeah, that's good. And again, I know you can't do the parties, but I'm just thinking that if somebody, yes, it's fun to all be there to do this, but you could do a Zoom where,
I'm definitely open to that.
Yeah. You guys, if you have friends that you would like to do this with, I went to 2 virtual birthday parties in one day. You can do a departure party. You can do a Good to Go party. Everybody does the same thing that you do in person. Everybody brings a little snack that means something to them. Have a good bottle of wine or your favorite beer. And then Amy comes on Zoom and you go have this exact experience. Yeah, the experience is just virtual right now. Because I'm telling you, the departure file is amazing, but to be part of that community and to hear everybody's stories, again, you just learn so much more. And even if you fill nothing out, you will remember this stuff. It'll mean so much to you and to your loved ones and to yeah, just all the way around. So,
Well,
all right.
just
So
what you're
good to go
saying.
peace.
Yes, goodtogopeace.org is my website, and
PEACE. Yep.
PEACE.org. Yeah. And yeah, I would love for, you know, any of your followers to reach out if they have any questions. This is my cosmic calling, and it's my passion. I just want everybody to do this.
I agree. 100%. I 100% agree with you. And it is absolutely your calling, and it's so clear. And the other thing too is throw questions here. Amy and I'll come back and check. She'll share this on her page. Come back and check. If you have any questions, and then I can hook you guys up virtually if need be. Go ahead.
One more point is that I really want to make is that the departure file is not considered a legal document. I am not a doctor. I am not a lawyer, but I am just someone who's lived through grief. I mean, my entire family died over a 4-year period. So I just, you know, kind of come through the other side, and I'm just like giving you guys all the information that you're going to need to know. And I say everybody from 18 up to 108 needs this stuff, you know, written down, and they need to know that you're clear if you've got a healthcare proxy and all of those things. And one last thing, sorry, I'm so chatty. There's a link on goodtogopeace.org under services where anybody in the United States can click on the link that I have that's underneath my little video where I describe what's in the departure file, and they can get their state's most current, up-to-date living will or advanced healthcare directive. They can print it out, and you don't need a lawyer. In most cases, you don't need it notarized. So you can get your living will done like that. Yeah, so I encourage people to print out their own free advanced healthcare directive from the Good to Go site.
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
Oh,
Lisa.
you're so welcome. I literally could talk to you all day about this stuff.
I know. I love it. And I'm so moved by how much it helped you. I'm telling you, you've made my day, week, month. Thank you. Thank you.
Good. You're so welcome. All right. So I'm going to end this recording now and hopefully edit out that little tiny piece. And again, thank you. And look in the comments for all of the information to contact her. Please, 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 please buy a departure file. It is an investment that is so worth it. I cannot even begin to explain how worth it. I just can't. So thanks,
Lisa.
You're welcome.